Hello, I'm Dana, and today I'm going to be trying out Arsha's paper for the first time. It's a big name in the watercolor community, and I'm sure most of you will have heard of it, if not all of you. But I have never been able to try it before, so during a paper sale, I decided to pick up a block. I chose the cold press because I was also trying out another block of hot press paper, two blocks of hot press paper actually, but those are different kinds. And I decided to go for a big cat because they're a subject that I just enjoy painting. And I went with a snow leopard this time around. As you can see, I was so excited to start this that I forgot to lighten the graphite and I forgot to tape off the edges. So you'll see me fixing that right now. Before I started on the painting of this, I was going back and forth in my head on whether I wanted to ink it or just leave it with the pencil sketch and go straight in with watercolor. And I ended up going with the latter, in part because I felt like I wanted to really focus on how watercolor acts on this paper for my first experience of using Arsha's simply because it is considered by a lot of people, not everyone, but by a lot of people, it's kind of the quintessential watercolor paper. And when it comes to cold press paper, I do tend to use ink less and I use ink more on hot press, but I don't mind inking on cold press paper. I will probably end up doing some ink and watercolor illustrations on this at some point, but for now, I felt like for my first piece on this block and my first time using Arsha's, it was the best thing for me to just explore with watercolor for now. And I also wanted to experiment with a few different things when it came to the actual watercoloring process for this. I wanted to explore soft and hard edges a little bit with it and practice that. And then I also wanted to experiment with layering a little bit with this as well. These are two areas that I am trying to both improve, so I'm just trying to practice in general, but I'm also trying to figure out things like how I want to do them. So, like stylistic choices as well as improvement and skill building. I played around a lot with different warms and cools in this, and using a snow leopard is a very good exercise for that, as it turns out, because it is a grey animal, a white and grey animal, but you'll see a lot of different color shifts in those greys. Some very yellow leaning, very earthy red leaning, or blue leaning. You'll get a lot of warm greys, cool greys, and it's a wonderful exercise in mixing all of those muted tones and getting across not just warms and cools, but also slight hue shifts, which was really, really fun. I definitely want to paint more snow leopards after painting this. And I started off by simplifying it down for this one. I went for a sort of red-ish leaning warm grey to start off with for the warm grey, and then a blue leaning cool grey, and then also a knocked back yellow ochre in places. You'll see a bit at the base of the ears, on the snoot, and around the eyes. I use yellow ochre, but I knocked it back a little bit. Yellow ochre is already not very vibrant, but I knocked it back slightly so that it was even earthier. I can't remember what I knocked it back with. I think it might have just been a little bit of burnt umber or a little bit of the cool grey and warm grey so that it didn't lean either way. And after that, I was pretty much mainly using a puddle of cool grey and a puddle of warm grey, which you'll see the top little bit of my palette is the cool grey and the bottom bit is the warm grey. And then I had a little puddle of the yellow ochre mix off on the other end of the palette on the lid. And it was playing around with those, but especially as this furthers on and on and on, it's mainly balancing that warm and cool that very muted browns and muted blues. Hello, pigeon. I don't know if you heard that, but the pigeons have arrived. Where was I? Painting. So, at this point in the process, I was in this delicate, almost tightrope balancing act in my mind because I could see in my head where I would imagine the layers would go and how they would end up developing as they were layered on top of each other. But I didn't necessarily have the enough experience in doing this to know whether or not that would actually be the outcome in practice. So there was kind of this almost completely opposite, these two completely opposite thoughts in my mind as I was painting of I can see where this is going and I have no idea where this is going. Both of those thoughts were kind of going through my head at this stage of the painting. But as the layers kept going and going and going, I was starting to lean more towards the, oh, I can see this coming together side of things. It wasn't quite that it was in an ugly stage of painting, it was more just that I didn't have the practical experience to know whether what I was theorizing was going to work or not. And that was just an interesting thing that I noticed while I was painting that I thought I'd bring up and share with people in case some of you might have had similar experiences when you've been painting or drawing. Also, by this point, I was developing my first few opinions of this paper, some first initial thoughts. And one thing that jumped out at me immediately, very early on, was that this paper is incredibly thirsty. Again, I've never used Arches before, so this was my first experience with it, but I had heard that this paper can be quite thirsty, and I had no idea quite how right that is. It is a very thirsty paper. You could feel it sucking up the water as you were painting. And I had to adjust my painting process quite a bit to it. And I also noticed that the brushes that I have, because I don't have too many brushes, you'll see when I'm painting that I use pretty much these three brushes the vast majority of the time because I don't have many brushes. I started off with one of those cheap multi-pack sets of brushes, which are the blue-handled ones. And then over the years, I've picked up a few single brushes here and there, like the brown-handled one I'm using. So I'm dual wielding at the moment. I'm placing down colors with the blue-handled brush, and then with the brown-handled one, which is a Princeton Neptune, I am softening off the edges. And I really, really, really wish that I had a much larger Princeton Neptune for this process because I was having to saturate my tiny brush with water to get the same kind of softening that I was used to doing on other papers. So I definitely noticed a big, big difference with this paper in terms of its thirstiness and how much water you need to use when you are painting. I was, however, absolutely adoring how the paper was handling the layering, how the pigment was looking on the paper, how it was sitting on the paper. All of that was a really, really nice experience. And it's not that the thirstiness was bad, it was just something to adjust to. It's something to know and something to adjust to. But other than that, I was really enjoying the process. I felt like the paper was handling the techniques I was using really, really well. And I was loving how the paint was looking on the paper. So, thumbs up so far in terms of my first experience with the paper. By this point, I was very much just trusting the process with the layering, and I had a feeling that it would start to come together a lot more once I started adding the dark values, especially when it came to the spots. And for the spots, I was playing around with the idea of going in with a warmer or a cooler grey and then going in with a second layer of the opposite. And I believe I went in with a warmer grey to start off with to do all of the spots, and then the cooler grey came in as a second layer. And this definitely started to bring all of the layers together and also just start making it make sense. And I love the process of inking or painting spots on animals. I do enjoy painting and inking stripes as well, but there's just something about placing spots that's very relaxing and almost meditative, and I really enjoy doing it. A lot of the time, I will sketch out the major spots and then I will just leave the rest to do spontaneously. But other times I will sketch out more of the spots and then leave a few areas to fill in spontaneously. And when it comes to the major spots on big cats, especially, it's usually the teardrop shapes that are on the eyebrows, and then some of the spots coming off from the eyes, especially if they have a little almost like stripe of spots under the eyes, and the directions of the spots along the cheekbones, because the direction that those spots go can help inform the viewer of the curvature of the cheekbones and things like that, which for me was important to, or is important to portray when I'm drawing or painting big cats. So I do sometimes tend to sketch those out, even if I don't sketch out the other spots. With this, I sketched out the vast majority of the spots in advance. But that's just something to note in general when I am painting or drawing cats. At least for this moment in time, we'll see whether that changes or not in the coming years, because art is an evolving process. So I'm sure my processes and the things that I do and how I do them will evolve over time somehow. But for the moment, that tends to be what I like to do. And yeah, I kind of want to record that a little bit in these videos to just show that progression over time. It interests me seeing other artists' progression over time, and leaving these little thoughts and tidbits in my videos not only is helpful for me to see my own journey of just changing and playing around and learning and evolving, but hopefully it'll be interesting to other people, like it's interesting for me to see other artists. Speaking of seeing things, I'm going to be drawing some animals from life again towards the end of this month, which I'm super excited for. It's been a little bit since I've drawn big cats from life, and I am hoping to maybe draw some leopards and cheetah, but we'll see what ends up working out. I'm going to remain flexible. I found that that is one of the best things to do when going into drawing animals from life, is to expect the unexpected and remain flexible. But I do hope that this time the weather isn't going to be too intense. It's going to be the end of April, so I'm anticipating maybe being flexible around scattered showers, possibly. But last time it was intense, intense heat when I was drawing big cats from life and other animals as well, like rhinos and things. But that was in, I think it was late August or early September, and in another part of the world. So hopefully we'll be all right in April. I'm not sure what supplies I want to bring with me yet. That's something that I need to figure out kind of soon, because I don't have that much time left before we're going to be going. And time has been going really, really quickly at the moment, so I should probably get on that before too long. I'm kind of playing around with the idea of maybe taking some painting supplies out with me this time. I usually only bring out one sketchbook and very, very limited supplies when I'm drawing animals from life. Usually just like a biro pen or a pencil and an eraser, but I'm not so sure this time. Part of me wants to bring a block of watercolour paper and one of my watercolour palettes and a little travel watercolour painting setup. But at the same time, this is a place that I haven't been to before, at least I don't ever remember going there even when I was little. So I haven't got any idea of what a painting setup would be like there. Like, are there benches? Are there places for me to easily sit and observe? Or am I going to be doing more standing in one place for a long time, which can get a little painful for me if I'm holding a bunch of painting supplies, but maybe I can just take them and then see what happens. Be flexible, like I said. Take them and be flexible. But I will take a couple days to decide and then go from there, I think. One thing that I know I want to do before I go, though, is brush up on drawing animals in motion. And there's a couple ways that you can do this easily from home. The easiest one is obviously if you have pets, to draw them as you're at home and it's a more comfortable space and you don't have any real time constraints outside of obviously your life obligations. But you can sit there and watch your animals and draw them. But you are a little bit restricted in obviously drawing the pets that you own. But that's a really easy, free resource, and it can be very comfortable to step in or dip your toes into practicing by using your pets that way. But another way is through watching live streams of animals, and there's loads and loads and loads of wildlife cameras out there now, and also animal sanctuary cameras. On Twitch, there's a bunch of animal sanctuary live streams that you can watch that are everything from ferrets. There's a ferret sanctuary live stream to cats, dogs, but then there's also on YouTube and on Twitch you can find wildlife cameras in Africa, and they're usually at waterholes, so you'll see all sorts of wildlife wandering by. You'll see elephants, hippos, lions, zebra, so on and so forth. You get the full experience that way, and the whole idea is to just draw animal gestures without pausing the live stream. And it's a very difficult but very rewarding exercise, and I haven't done it that much recently, if I'm honest, and I've been really feeling the itch to get back into that practice again because it is very, very rewarding, though it's also very difficult at the same time. Similar as human gesture drawing as well. It's a very difficult but rewarding practice to do. Oh, another thing that I've been really wanting to get back into again are doing some sketchbook draw with me sessions. I've been doing a lot of illustration recording recently and painting recording, and it feels like it's been forever since I just opened up my sketchbook with you guys and drew. And I've been doing a lot of sketching, but I've been doing a lot of it either completely off camera or I have been just recording little snippets for reels and things like that. But I've been really, really wanting to record some sketchbook sessions again. So if you're interested in those, let me know, but I will more than likely be recording some of those soon. And probably I'm going to do a head drawing one, I think. But I could do some animal gesture ones, maybe, if that would be something people would be interested in watching. it would be very loose. It's not going to be very pretty, aesthetic sketchbook spreads, but it might be interesting for some of you to see. So if you are interested in that, let me know. But probably some head drawing and maybe some character drawing and animal drawing. There's lots of different sketchbook things. One of the things I've been doing in my sketchbook recently, I'm opening it up, is combining ballpoint pen and then rubbing in colour pencil on top once I'm done. So I'll do head drawings, portrait studies in ballpoint pens, and then I will really, really lightly put down some layers of colour pencil and then rub those into the paper with some tissue paper. And I'll do a layer, rub that layer in, and then do another layer. And I usually do 2 or 3 layers, and I find that that produces a really nice, soft, almost glowy effect. It's something that you'll see some other creators do, but in a slightly different way. Like, just off the top of my head, Emily Hughes, she rubs in colour pencil, but she does a different technique. She usually uses entirely colour pencil or colour pencil and alcohol markers. I think she's done colour pencil and alcohol markers, but she does tend to rub in, that's it, she rubs in Coloraze, so a raisable colour pencil. She rubs that in when she's doing colour pencil drawings, but in this case I'm kind of using them to add a soft glow behind my pen sketches, and I've really been enjoying that in my sketchbook recently. Back to this painting, I'm currently working on the background in the process that you're watching, and I decided to continue playing with a background style that I did in a recent cheetah portrait, which is also up on this channel. And for that, I did a really loose, wet wash just to get down a few colour gradations, and then I let that dry, and then I go in with another layer of watercolour that's more about building up simple shapes and letting some have hard edges, some have soft edges, and just to build up a little bit of a texture. And then let that dry, and then go over with colour pencil hatching and have the hatching go off in different directions to again build up that really, really loose, blurred out sense of foliage. And it's something that I want to keep exploring and expanding upon and building upon in future illustrations and paintings, I think. But for now, it provides an interesting variation on a background than your more usual wet washes with some blurred out foliage just in watercolor. And we'll see where this little experiment of adding the hatching in takes me as I explore and expand upon it. It's a little bit more apparent, the variation in colour for the colour pencil in the close-ups, but when you're zoomed out a little bit further, you can't quite see all the different colours used, which can be interesting because it provides more information when you're looking up close. But this is the finished painting. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!